So we continue to talk about this bitter battle, I should say, over power at the Minnesota House. We are now 1 week into the session, but that dispute is still keeping Democrats away from the state capitol.
And a key case before the Minnesota Supreme Court tomorrow could help resolve those differences. At issue is the question of quorum, or the minimum number of House members required to do anything. Democrats contend that threshold is 68 members. Republicans argue it's 67 because of a one-seat vacancy when Democrat Curtis Johnson said he wouldn't take office. The GOP has a 67-66 one-seat edge temporarily until a special election for that House District's 40B. DFL leaders say they're still pushing for a deal sooner than later.
And what you always try to do is you always try to resolve a solution because both parties have a lot of risks going into court. Their risk going into court is to have the Minnesota Supreme Court rule that everything that they've done is illegitimate. Our risk going into court is for the Minnesota Supreme Court to stay out of it and not really take a position.
The highest court will hear arguments in that case on Thursday. When asked by WCCO, Democrats said a ruling in their favor would not seal the deal for them to show up at the Capitol. They still want assurances from GOP members that they won't not use their advantage to unseat the DFL winner of a consensus seat in Shakopee. Meanwhile, the Benton County Board says enough is enough.
That county board passed a resolution condemning Representative Dan Wolgamott of St. Cloud for his part in the DFL boycott. They voted unanimously to call for him and DFL colleagues to return to work in St. Paul. That resolution stated that their, quote, absence during the first week of the session is a dereliction of duties and deprives Benton County residents of their voice. Now to national news, President Trump signing an executive order during his first day in office, reversing protections for transgender people. And this drew praise from his supporters.
The order reads, quote, it is the policy of the United States to recognize two sexes, male and female. These sexes are not interchangeable, end quote. But not everyone is happy. The transgender community here in Minnesota is reacting with renewed vigor to mobilize and unite.
There is no other thing for us to do except for organize, use the law, use public opinion, and fight against this movement. Otherwise, we're done for.
State Representative Finke says one of the big issues is how the new order fits in with state laws. Minnesota currently has widespread transgender protections. Constitutional law professor David Schultz says Trump's order will not override most of those laws.
Trump cannot issue an executive order, and Congress cannot overrule the states on this, because this is a basic matter of federalism, that states have a right to be able to pass legislation that provides more protections than the United States government.
Schultz says the order will likely affect federal laws, including possible benefits for federal employees. He adds that the specifics of this order are bound to end up in court for months. Recall following a couple of court cases for you this morning.
Now, many of you might remember this first story. A would-be robber meets his match, a girl and her bat. So 37-year-old Conchabar Morel of St. Paul attempted to rob Big Discount Liquors in Maplewood. This was back in September. But look at this store surveillance. Shows him dressed as an Amazon worker. Reaches into the pocket, gets a realistic BB gun on the counter. Orders the store manager to empty the register, but right there, see that little one?
Yep.
She'd been sitting behind the counter. She was the manager's 8-year-old daughter. So when Morel stepped behind the counter, the store manager, Leo, punches the man, wrestling him to the floor. And you see that brave little girl? Bat in hand right there. She hit the suspect a few times before running away. Now, Leo said he asked his daughter the next day what made her do that. She told him that she wanted to defend him and that she loved him so much.
Today, the Isanti nurse killed by her husband will finally have justice. 35-year-old Sarah Carta was shot to death in her home in October of 2023. Her husband, Mike Carta, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. He also pleaded guilty to second-degree attempted murder for shooting at a deputy responding to their disturbance call. At the time of Sarah's death, her husband had a pending domestic assault case and was subject to a domestic abuse no contact order.